All right, man. So we've seen our fair share of creepy kid movies so far this year, between Hole in the Ground, The Prodigy. But what do you think would be like the be-all, end-all of the creepy kid if we could see it?
I think after watching this one, give him superpowers.
Yeah.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird.
I mean, Fuego here.
We are here to do our review of the brand new release of Evil Superboy. Brightburn. That's what we're here to talk about, you guys. And yes, this is absolutely 100% what would happen if Superman had landed and was evil instead of good. It's so much so that it actually does take place in Kansas. The namesakes, though, are the Briars.
Yes, indeed. And honestly, no sugarcoating. It embraces its R rating in quite the horrific fashion at times. Especially
It's a gun feature.
Yeah, it is.
Of course.
Yeah, yes. This is the Gunn extended family. We had James Gunn producing it, and then I don't think Brother Gunn, but there was like a couple cousins that wrote the script. And yeah, they go for it, man. This is a movie that really goes for it as far as superhero counter-programming. So
That's absolutely true. And not only that, but to that end, producer Dave actually went to the theater before this movie. I said, hey, you want to go see Brightburn with us today? Because he had the day off rarely, or as he rarely does. And he said, sure. I was thinking about going to see Endgame because I haven't seen that yet.
Give that
and I was
movie
like,
more
go
money.
ahead. That's actually really good counter programming. Just make sure you're done by the time we see this one. So he did, and then he watched this. And just because producer Dave isn't going to be in this review, he did say he walked out of the theater saying, well, I had fun with that.
Yeah.
He's like, that was actually really good counter programming to Avengers Endgame.
producer Dave endorsement.
Indeed. So to that end, let's get to, I'm saying to that end a lot. I gotta rein that back in, but let's go ahead and start off this review like we normally do. We're going to give our overall thoughts, then we're going to talk about the story, the acting, definitely the effects, and the sound, all that good stuff in turn. So my overall thoughts were, I liked this movie. I actually had some worries going into it, like how they were going to progress the story and make this kid turn out to be evil in such a rapid fashion as to condense it all into one movie.
90 minutes, no less.
90 minutes, yeah. Lean and mean, this one. And I will say that the way they decided to do it satisfied me. I was worried that I was going to be like dissatisfied with that aspect, but because they did it the way they did, I felt like it made enough sense that I could just sit back and enjoy the movie that unfolded before me in a very rapid fashion.
Yeah.
Like, they don't waste any time in this movie. And so I enjoyed it. I had a good time with Brightburn. I think it's something that people should definitely see. And yes, I do think it's worth going to see in the theater. If you're short on cash, you can wait. But if you have the expendable income, I think it's worth going to see on a big screen.
Yeah, or like catch a daytime screening or something of that
Matinee,
nature.
yeah.
Yeah, this is one that I didn't necessarily go in with high expectations, but I went in with a little trepidation and apprehension, for the sheer fact that I'm like, okay, first and foremost, we didn't know if it was going to be R-rated, if it was going to fully embrace it. And the first 2/3 of the film, I'm not sure if they necessarily did. But when it turns into a full-on horror movie, and this isn't really spoiler because the last trailer for the film is like, yeah, it's embracing how much of a horror movie it becomes. It's like, okay, they're not shying away from letting people know, come sit in the seats so that you can see where this movie really goes. And that's where it really just solidified itself as something much bolder and crazier than I was necessarily anticipating. It had some shades of The Boys. It had some shades of The Cape from Joe Hill.
Definitely, yeah.
Big time that. And so I was very satisfied as well. I'm not going to say I absolutely adored it.
Right.
But in the same right, I want more. Not necessarily from this franchise, although we could see more. We're not going to say one way or the other, but we could see more. There's always ways to twist it in this genre. But yeah, just more approaching just superpowers from this perspective, I'd say.
I agree. Yeah, this one, I do agree with you. I felt there were at times like, oh, if they had done this, it would have been really impactful and dramatic. Like, there were some choices made. And because of the breakneck pace of the movie,
I did feel like the pacing was just, it didn't really give you enough time to simmer on certain beats. It just
right,
kept going and going.
Right. I feel like it definitely could have allowed more time for some things to breathe and let you really get even more invested in some things. I feel like this movie wouldn't have been out of place being an hour and 50 minutes.
Yeah.
Give it another 20 minutes. And I think it honestly would have served the movie well
Most
to have us
superhero
more
movies
invested.
are like 2.5, 3 hours in this
Right.
day and age anyway. So, give them another 20, 25 minutes to, just let it develop and let it sink in. Just the magnitude of what's happening here.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
destruction of a family,
but
the
that's the thing.
ascension of an evil. Whoop, sorry.
Well, yeah, and not only that, but it's done so kind of. It's not done. It doesn't feel rushed per se, but it does feel kind of breakneck, and it feels like I would have liked to see more development in certain areas. So I guess that means I felt it was rushed, even though it didn't feel rushed per se in my mind. You know what I mean? Like, it unfolded at a fine pace, and I understood why it unfolded at such a quick pace due to the stories, due to the plot, the way they chose to have it unfold.
It hit all the necessary beats, and it
Right.
didn't rush the necessary beats, but all of those little, kind of fill-in bits that really enhance the pacing.
They
and
could have
everything.
taken the time to
Yeah.
really indulge themselves in a moment or two, and they didn't.
A good word to choose, man. Yeah.
I feel like this movie earned the ability to indulge themselves a couple of times that they didn't. They did indulge themselves, though, in a couple of moments. I will say that.
In particular. We will
There
get to
are
that
a
later
couple
in
of
the
those
effects.
moments, but yeah, I feel like they didn't go quite as far and dive quite as deep as they probably could have at times.
In the storytelling.
In the storytelling, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
In other
in
ways,
the service of runtime.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think they were trying to make it lean and mean, which it is, but I feel like the story overall would have been served more to dive a little bit deeper at times.
Yeah, although they dove deeper with some of the violence than I was expecting. I can't wait to talk about that.
Yeah, so but we'll stick with the story first since I'm kind of segueing into that. And this is just what the trailer portrays. So it's a couple in Kansas that, they run across a kid that has dropped from space.
And suddenly they think we're not in Kansas anymore.
Okay, all right. I don't approve that. I don't approve that. File it. But nonetheless, they find this child, they raise this child, and this all happens very rapidly.
Yeah, it's like montage stuff.
It is. It's done montage style for the first 3 minutes or 5 minutes of the movie, and then it like fades out, and it's like 10 years later, and boom. That's when the kid is the age he is in the trailers and stuff. And basically what happens is he starts to realize that he's different. And the parents are trying to wrestle with, okay, what do we tell him? When do we tell him? All this stuff. But the movie moves so fast that before they have a chance to decide on any of those things, it's too late.
Yeah.
He's discovering things, and things are moving, and you can't stop a moving train, as some people say.
Yeah, faster than a speeding bullet or whatever.
More powerful than a locomotive. Yeah, no, absolutely. So that's the long and short of it. I mean, it progresses really fast. The boy discovers that he's got powers, and he discovers that he doesn't necessarily need to play by our rules. And there are there are lessons that he's taught that he twists kind of to his own,
The
needs.
whole bees wasp thing.
No, that's something different. Like, honestly, there's some good filmmaking moments. Pay attention to the lesson at the beginning of the movie. Because it tells you what's going to happen, essentially. I watched it, and apparently I was the one that picked up on it, and Fuego and producer Dave both did, and I told Dave the same thing out there. He's like, oh, I didn't make that connection until you just told me.
I didn't pick up on it on the first time I read The Shining, where it's like the wasp can sting multiple times over and over.
It's something like that, where they reveal something that can definitely apply. So pay attention to that, but... yeah, I mean, the story just unfolds there, and what do the parents do as they discover that, their child might not be what they thought he was? This is basically the moment where the Kents find out that Clark has powers, except this Clark isn't as noble.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I actually especially appreciated the way that they approached the kid trying to hide it from the parents. I thought it was chilling and scary, and it really, in this era where, I do the Profiling Pain with Chris, where we talk about just the dual lives of these serial killers and how they save face with their loved ones and all this other stuff, and they just seem so nice and genuine and everything, and then they have this sick, twisted double life that they're living at the same time. That's what's going down with this kid, man.
Yeah.
And it's really messed up, and the parents they're in disbelief because they don't want to accept that we made a really bad choice by taking this kid in and, some of the dream sequences were written very, very well and chillingly. And once it really fully revs into a horror movie in the third act, I thought the writing was very sharp, especially some of the kill sequences. So yeah, those are really
absolutely good. Yeah, and so I let's just segue into it. I mean, we both want to talk about the effects. The effects were really, really well done in this.
For a lower budget horror movie, I mean, like mid-tier budget, I would say, probably in the 10 to 12 million range, maybe even a little less.
Likely so, but yeah, it was done very well. I mean, the powers, a lot of it was done sort of using sound, so it kind of ties hand in hand with the sound.
Was actually really
the
good
score
in this too.
Yeah, but especially in the final act, there's a lot of sound design going on that's freaking you out, and legitimately freaking you out because you're following a character inside the home, and you're hearing stuff going on outside the home, and it's really, really cool, and you're like, oh, it's nerve-wracking.
You're almost hearing through his super in-tuned ears, and it's really cool.
Well, and then they go from that to what the other character is hearing, and it's not just the banging, but it's screaming and shouts of freaking defiance and stuff like that. Like, it's,
even though it's not one of the gorier scenes in the movie, and this isn't going to reveal anything, but where the lights up above broke and the aftermath of it, I like that scene. The guy sitting next to me, he was looking at me as I was just like cringing as a character is trying to
it's
deal
done,
with the situation.
There's a lot of stuff that's done very well. I mean, they do a really good job. It's not full of jump scares. It's not full of any scares like that at all, really. It's the situation. And it's like, when you put yourself in the situation, what would happen if there's legitimately someone with superpowers that has ill intent? Where do you hide? What do you do? You can't do anything, and this really plays up on that.
And I would even make the torture porn comparison in that aspect, because it's like where somebody has someone where you're at the mercy of this other presence, this other power, and it can just do as it wills with you, and you're just at its mercy.
And the fun thing about the movie is they go for it. Like, there's a moment in the trailer that, like, I was for sure they were going to cut away from, and like kind of on the schoolyard. And then they kept it. Not only that, but there was a close-up that was like, oh! And like that, so the movie doesn't shy away. Like, it takes its time to get to that stuff, but once it gets there, it gets there. Like, it doesn't hold back at that point.
And that's the first slip up in the manifestation, and that's what really just turns the corner for just wondering, okay, is everything really okay with this kid? And it just gets worse from there. So.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the cinematography was great too. I mean, the way that it's framed up and the way that it's shot and the reveals by lighting and lightning and things like that. Like, there's a lot of really cool stuff, and the fact that he does literally almost have all the powers of Superman. He's got super speed, flight, all this stuff, and heat vision, of course. Yeah, there's some serious eye contact.
My favorite scene in the movie, I would possibly say. It's so well done.
It is awesome. I mean, did you have any trouble with any of the effects? I mean, obviously,
no, not at all.
When it happens so fast, that has to be CG, sure, but it happens so fast that it's like you're in it. You're like, you don't. It doesn't bother you.
Well, and there's another scene that is like straight up the boys, like we talked about, where just running right through a character. Dave
loved that. When they showed the reveal, Dave was like, and Dave never laughs at stuff like that, but he dug that scene. I was like,
as much as I love the way that they did it in The Boys, in this movie, in an R-rated horror movie for like big theatrical release, I was just like, that was on point.
Yeah, it was good. It was
like,
good.
Damn.
So yeah, I mean, ultimately, you guys, we enjoyed this movie. I mean,
it's not perfect.
It's not perfect. And I will say this. In the depth department, it's kind of puddle deep.
Yeah,
they don't take the time to dive in, like I was saying earlier, to really. Again, if they had given this movie an extra 20-25 minutes to really dive in, I think it could have been unbelievably effective.
Yeah,
in
this
today's
could have
day and
gone from
age.
like a 3 to 3.5 star to maybe like
to a 4.5.
Yeah, creeping to like a perfect superhero horror film.
It really could have if they had taken that
all
time.
the pieces were in place here.
So yes, I would agree with you. Actually, I would say this is a 3 to 3. I would give it 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah,
I would give it 3.5 out of 5. I think it earns that. We don't normally do scores, but since you brought it up, I think that's a good way to say it. I think, yes, if they had given it 20-25 more minutes and really dived deep into some other slower moving scares, you know what I mean? Like that one, the very first one where he gets permission from his father to kind of do something after the fact. That one was actually, I thought that was very effective.
You know,
and if we had gotten more tension building scenes like that, I think the movie would have been served very well for it.
Yeah, and that's actually the one thing we didn't touch on was performances. I thought performances,
You're right.
Performances, especially from this young kid, the chilling balance between just lack of emotion and everything, but yet just the way the parents approach things, and like father from The Office, you know, Pam's ex,
Yep.
being a little bit more on the trigger happy side, a little bit more on the just like, you know,
he's more practical.
He's the father, and the mother played by Elizabeth Banks, you know, another gun protege, just being, you know, of the nurturing and not willing to accept. I mean, these are all just very archetype kind of, you know, roles that parents play and everything. But I actually thought Elizabeth Banks' sister was quite good in the role, and you know, she's that scene,
and the sister's husband, who was from Breaking Bad, also very good.
But the scene where the kid is in there with her, and she's like, just because you're family, I'm not going to let it slide, you know, and you just see the reaction, and without really saying anything, just
you're like,
the way this kid emoted and expressed and everything, and his body language.
See, I will say,
really good.
Just to counter that a little bit.
Okay, a little bit.
I feel like he might have been directed to be a little tiny bit over the top at those times, because he literally starts to like kind of shake, and then it cuts, and it's like, oh, I guess nothing happened after that.
It was beyond Damien.
It was a little bit. He was directed to go a little too far, or they cut a little bit too late.
Well, and
so I will say it's not. That's why it's a 3.5, because there were times like that a couple of tiny tweaks would have raised it to probably a 4, and if they had added that depth, that would have pushed it to the 4.5.
Well, yeah, just a few tweaks in a few specific areas, and this could have been maybe one of the more memorable superhero movies. Not that it's...
Well, it is one of those.
Well, easily for doing something so
If you liked Chronicle...
For doing something so drastically different.
Yeah.
I will give them credit for that.
This is not found footage, but if you liked Chronicle... and kind of how that went, this is of that sort of vein.
If you get powers, and will you use them for good or for nefarious means?
Well, but not only that, and again, one of the things I want to make very clear is that there was an issue that I had going into this. Like, how are they going to show if this kid has been raised by a loving family? I'm like, either the family has to be super abusive, or they have to come up with a good reason for him to break bad so fast.
And I thought the latter was
done.
I
agree. I agree.
Yeah.
I think without spoiling what happens, I think they justified the way things went down,
and in a simplistic fashion.
In a very simplistic,
yeah, because
fashion.
Everything.
The simplicity might be a gripe that some people have to that end.
Well, for the deep diving comic fans that love just this extensive lore and everything, I mean, I don't know. It makes me wonder if there's going to be any corresponding comic book stuff along for this, because
there might actually have been.
The
but
kid
I
has such
don't
an
know
iconic
for sure.
look. I still thought that,
I liked that look.
In some of the dimly lit scenes, the way he had like the shoelace and the stitching looked like teeth. Dude.
Yeah.
It legitimately
but like
teeth
vertical teeth.
Yeah.
Like.
that
kind of stuff. Yeah,
it was creepy.
No, it was a good. It was.
I dug it.
He was designed really cool. Like I liked his little
and then
uniform.
all the notebook drawings and everything were rad.
Yeah,
too.
the Brightburn.
Yes.
So
Brightburn, Kansas.
It's you
Stay
guys
for the end credits too, by the way. Not the end.
No,
end
you don't
credits.
need to stay until the end, but yeah, there's some flashes towards the beginning of the credits. So, it's fun, you guys. I think this movie is well worth your time, quite frankly.
Same.
And I think it's at the very least worth matinee prices. If you're a big superhero fan and you want the other end of the spectrum, but just are okay going into it, knowing that it's not going to be the deepest of affairs, then this is the movie for you. I mean, that's quite frankly the last one that James Gunn produced was that Office one, the Belko Experiment,
Exactly.
right? And that was similarly puddle deep.
Yeah.
This
and
is
also
this is
similarly
this is
more
better.
like self-contained, like this
Similarly
one.
self-contained. This is better, but it's equally shallow. I will say that.
Agreed.
I will say that.
Yeah, no. That's
But
fair
it's worth your
assessment, sir.
time. It's worth your time. You
Yeah,
know what
and
I
I
mean?
would say that, I mean, if you're a fan of superhero stuff, maybe try to see it, on the screen, but don't pay too much. It's not like in IMAX 3D or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's not like Marvel precedents, but,
I think it's a fun date movie, actually. I think it would be a fun date movie. If your date is of a strong constitution and has a solid stomach, then you guys will be good. All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for our thoughts and our review of Brightburn, our non-spoiler thoughts. Again, I don't think this justifies a full spoiler review because it would just be like, this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens.
Yeah,
and
this kill was dope, and that's really about all we would have to
right.
cover. So.
But yeah, it's go check it out. If you enjoyed the video, click that like button. We greatly appreciate it, and it definitely helps the channel if you do. If you want to see more content like this, click that subscribe button and ring that notification bell if you want to make sure you know every time an episode goes live.
So click back to subscribe if you want to subscribe more.
Okay. Also, if you want to become a patron where you can actually request us to review particular movies, there's a link to that in the description box down below. Until next time, though, I've been Cecil Laird.
Gracias. I've been Jaime Fuego.
And remember, stay scared!